Michael Malice, best-selling author, researcher, wrote the book on North Korea. You can find his website, michaelmalice.com, on our loving leader. I don't get how it's like the elephant in the room that collectivism doesn't work and is a nightmare and puts the worst people in charge. And it just continues. And now North Korea, like we said at the start of the interview 30 minutes ago, and then it's Trump's fault. Forget Trump. I'm not going to let them blame Trump, a golf course owner, for a third-generation North Korean dictator that the Clintons gave nuclear weapons to. It's not about Trump. It's about sanity. I am not going to sit here and just let them blame mythical creatures for the nightmare of communism. I mean, how do they juxtapose this? When do they understand that it doesn't work?
Right. And I think it's really funny. It's like Trump has been president for, what, 7 months? And it's like, how haven't you solved the North Korean problem yet? Well, it's been around for 70 years. I mean, and no one, during the Obama years, no one cared that he was basically kicking the can down the road. He didn't know what to do. I don't blame him for not knowing what to do. It's a very, very tricky situation. But again, the fact that when people don't know what to do, their first reaction is to go partisan and attack the other party, that's not helpful, and it's very telling, I think.
It is. So you've been there.
Yes.
Why, not just North Korea. Why does the left still salivate about communism? It's like salivating over colon cancer.
Because I think communism and totalitarianism especially is the only mechanism where you can take an entire country and impose your will and your vision.
So it's a delusional dream. It hasn't been done right yet. Hitler didn't do it right. Kim Jong-il didn't do it right. But they're going to do it right.
I think people are also uncomfortable with the idea that under freedom, sometimes people are going to make choices you don't like. And sometimes people are going to make choices that you would consider to be terrible. And they're not comfortable with that. They have to have their way everywhere on earth as much as they can. I mean, that's just the totalitarian vision of how societies should be, and every society should be.
You've been in North Korea. Talk about what you witnessed. Talk about growing up, in the Soviet Union previously to coming to America. Because I feel guilty when I see Kim Jong-un or a military parade, because I know there's real slaves under that. Bad things are happening, but I can't help but laugh at it. I mean, it's like it's like Jim Jones to infinity.
Well, Jim Jones was voluntary. Those people all signed up to go to Jonestown and so on and so forth. North Korea, they punished the whole family, 3 generations. The founder of North Korea, the great leader Kim Il-sung, said class enemies must be exterminated to 3 generations. You're a dad. If someone takes your kids and says, hey, Alex, put on this clown suit and march down the street, you'd be marching real quick, wouldn't you? Wow.
So where does it go? In your gut, talk about North Korea. Talk about your experiences, like you said, in growing up in the Soviet Union, which was, I guess, a mild comparison to this, but still.
I mean, I left Russia when we were 2. I have a lot of stories, but Alex, it's nothing compared to North Korea.
So exactly. Talk about that. We got time in this segment. Talk about that.
I mean, by the end of the Soviet Union, and this is starting to happen in North Korea, thankfully, everyone knew it was crap, right? They're told something, and we have some similarities here. You're taught one thing in school, and school being a function of the government and the government ideology, and then you open your eyes and look around, you're like, this is not what reality is like. And it's the same thing in North Korea when they're taught that the world envies us and we're so wealthy. It's like, yeah, it's great that we're so wealthy. Why don't I have food? It doesn't take much intelligence to realize that there's a disconnect between the reality and the propaganda. And at the end of the Soviet Union, especially when they had access to the West and Western television, and they were seeing how Americans live, they were like, wait a minute, why am I wiping my butt with newspaper, literally? And I'm looking at this show, and on this show, everyone has a maid, and every maid has a fur coat and a car. So, and what's happening in North Korea now is they're seeing television programs from China and from South Korea, and they're listening to crappy South Korean K-pop, the kids are, and it's like, I want to, why am I going to go to jail for listening to pop music? It doesn't make sense. So there's an increasing amount of cynicism toward the government in North Korea, which I think it's what brought down the Soviet Union partly, and this is what's going to bring down the regime, that they're realizing that it's not a god at the top, it's just some fat jerk.
I'll speak about your experience in the Soviet Union, because I want to talk about that, but the paradox of communism and Kim Jong-un and a hereditary dictator, a force-fed, like, chipmunk toddling around. We can all laugh at it, but he's got real people under him. Like you said, he's enslaving, he's killing. I mean, it's not a joke, even though we all laugh at it and then feel guilty. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I mean, my family's Jewish. We left the Soviet Union because that's the other thing that the left likes to ignore. These totalitarian dictatorships North Korea is the most racist country on earth. They talk about racial purity constantly. And if you have refugees who go to China and are perhaps sold into sex slavery or something like that, they're forced to miscarry or to abort because they're not going to mix their Korean blood with the Chinese blood. David Duke got his master's in Ukraine, where I was born. So this is a dirty little secret of these totalitarian dictatorships. Progressives like to think, oh, once we run everything, you're not going to have any prejudice or racism. No, no, no. The prejudice or racism becomes the law.
I was about to say, they just spew terms instead of actually looking where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, Stalin had took huge populations, forced them to migrate. He took after one ethnicity after another, but they don't like to talk about that. They only want to talk about Hitler. So everyone, and I'm sure.
And we're not, Hitler's bad. It's like there's other, it's not worth saying Hitler's good, Hitler's bad. There's just other, Mao killed more people than anybody in history. But let's talk about that then, because that's the point I was going to get to, is that we have it so good in the West. We're not perfect. I'm not defending everything. I'm just saying we have it so good that there's like this weird love affair with authoritarianism and communism and, you know, all the rest of it. I just don't even understand how the two things even exist when people know this is going on. And there's the paradox. My own children are great people, but myself included, I don't know how to fix stuff like my dad did, my kids. We get lazy, we get appreciative. So there's the paradox of horrible authoritarianism, which is terrible, but then you look at the average North Korean starving to death, looks healthier than a fat American like myself. So I'm just saying, like, we've got our own problems. How do those two things come together?
Well, Alex, you remember when we were younger, one of the big talking points, or not talking points, actual criticisms about the Soviet Union was the KGB, right? All your phone calls were listened to, all your letters were open, people would be spying on you all the time. But now we have the NSA, which is the same exact phenomenon, even worse, and no one seems to mind. So it's just mind-boggling to me how, and this is delivered by conservatives. It's mind-boggling the people who won the Cold War, the Reagan people, are the same ones who are importing the worst of the Soviet Union to this country.
Well, you know how that worked. First they say, oh, no one's spying on you. It's crazy. When I was covering 20 years ago. Then everybody's kind of conditioned that it doesn't exist. So once it's all admitted, you go, well, I better not complain because kooks talk about it. You know, it's like atrazine, you know, making the frogs, be sterile. We'll just make a joke, and then it's okay that most of the amphibians are dying. It's okay our environment's collapsing because we're going to tax carbon. It's wild. So how old were you when you left the Soviet Union?
2.
So you don't remember much about it.
But I mean, I was raised in a Soviet household. Let's talk about that Google Doc thing that just happened. When you grow up in a Russian household, you are taught to remember whoever has power over you, be aware of it, and realize they're going to use that power for arbitrary purposes all the time. So I was not surprised at all that this Google thing happened. And this is exactly what to expect when you're dealing with people whose vision is, I can't abide any thought other than my own. And if the people who I saw people on Twitter, not only they were cheering him be getting fired, and the kid went to Harvard and MIT, he's no dummy. They also, if they had their druthers, he would never work again. For what?
It's amazing. Whereas my ethos was, we are Ulysses. We're going to empower humanity. And I don't want to set America above others, but it's that ideal that we're going to empower. We're going to go to the stars. We're going to, and it's under such attack. How could the elites attack that idea that my grandmother gave me versus Kim Jong-un? How could someone reject that?
I don't think they ever had that idea. I think their vision of what America should be is basically like a European social democracy where everyone is reliant on the government from cradle to grave to some extent, and we're all in this together. You remember Bernie Sanders was talking about how great it is that there's income equality in Venezuela. Yeah, if everyone's broke, your incomes are...
Everyone's eating their dogs and cats. The zoos have been closed for 5 years. They've eaten the animals. What about this article on Infowars.com? It links through to mainstream news. Governor Brown told the Chinese dictator president elected by the Politburo, by the Secretariat, that he wants to model California after China. What? I mean, aren't people threatened by a regime that kills tens of thousands of Buddhists? The left hates Christians. Okay, just kill all them. What about Buddhists? They don't even do anything. But because they like to do Falun Gong, they kill them. I mean, what type of regime? And the left's like, oh, God, that's really sexy. Let's kill Buddhists. I mean, God, that's really sexy, Alex. I mean, don't you want to kill people?
And Jerry Brown has been known for decades as a strong environmentalist. And China's record on the environment is abysmal. You have smog in these cities. People can't even breathe.
Coal, dirty coal. That's what I'm saying. So what is the love affair with communism and the left then? Is it because they haven't experienced it? I mean, because I just don't get it. It's like the left's like, we really like cancer. We really want it. It's really good. And we really want cancer right now. I mean, I don't understand these people.
I think you have a lot of educated people, overly educated, who resent the fact that they're convinced of their own brilliance, and they resent the fact that others aren't persuaded by their crap. So they think if we can't persuade other people, we're going to force them to listen to what I have to say because I am smarter and better than other people.
Michael Malice, let me ask you this, best-selling author on North Korea. What is the spirit of North Korea? Because, again, I want to take Kim Jong-un out, but then I get it's a bunch of slaves under him, so then I don't. I mean, it's very... I want to make a decision on it. I'm normally a decisive guy, but I get where Trump's at. It's like, what do you do? He's like threatening. I mean, what is the spirit of North Korea?
When I went to a restaurant there, and they had these cheap plastic placemats with like pictures of roses on them, you know, the kind you get in a 99-cent store. And you look at them, and you're like, look, this is tacky. And then you realize this is these people's attempt to have some measure of beauty when the best place you can shop is Chinese imports.
This is the best they've got.
But they're trying to be human. They're trying to have beauty in their lives and humor and humanity in an inhumane situation. So when you look at them, realize they're not the same as Americans, but they're human beings who love their grandkids and who just want food. And it's not like they're closet jihadis or anything like that. They just want that. Look at South Korea. It's a strong ally.
They're people living in a government cult. And then you see liberals with their restaurants with Mao making jokes and loving North Korea. And it really makes me not hate them. It makes me look at the spoiled, rotten left in America, and I just really, really fear them. I mean, as a man, as a father, I'm going to be honest with you, brother, I want to square up against these people. I am really angry at them because I can't blame the North Koreans. But I look at these spoiled, rotten people that are pissing on America and embracing radical Islam, all of it. I don't know what their problem is. Why are they doing it?
And the disgrace and having no reverence for all of Mao's victims or Stalin's victims or Kim Jong-il's victims. I mean, this is a disservice to the millions of bodies whose names will never be known, who are just thrown in the...
So I'm asking, you're a smart guy, what is wrong with them? Because I'll talk to like a BuzzFeed writer, hey, communism, they'll smile like they get off on like, yeah, you're next. It's like it's like they're into the evil. What is it?
I think they have their own barely disguised faith where they think that they are the evangelicals who are going to proselytize and conquer the world and basically bring on...
Exactly. They're going to be stomping our guts out and raping our wives in the gulag.
Yeah, and they're all on a power
You're smart. That's what it is. It's like some weird existential death orgy thing.
Yeah, they have their vision of how the world should be, and they're going to force it whether you like it or not. And other people are going to have to pay the prices for their vision.
God almighty. It's just, as bad as America is, thank God we're here. We got our problems.
Yes,
but, man, I am so sick of America being run down constantly. When you just see hell, I've been to a lot of foreign countries, and it's just a lot of great countries as well. Oh, wow. Well, tell folks about your book, because you've written a lot of books. You've ghostwritten a lot of books, too. You're like a prolific writer. Well, what are the top books folks can read from you?
The most important book is Dear Reader, about North Korea, because this is the issue where right now, you might remember, Alex, you remember the Iraq War and the ramping up to that very well. So if people want to be informed of North Korea and not listen to the nonsense that's being put out there in the corporate press, you'll get some understanding, all the understanding you need of how this country really works.
Well, where do you think this ends? Just gut level. I mean, where's this going?
This is two cars racing at each other at high speed, a game of chicken.